Everyone aspires to be the best at something, but when this confidence transforms into taking others for granted, the universe might deliver a lesson. Understanding that there's always someone better out there is the key to humility, which is what truly defines the strongest individuals. My name is Mina, and I've been married to my husband Thomas for 2 years. When we decided to tie the knot, Thomas warned me about his troublesome sister, suggesting she might become a burden. As an only child, the prospect of having a sister excited me. But Thomas's words also sparked anxiety and curiosity about the kind of trouble she could bring. Now, 2 years into our marriage, I fully comprehend and have experienced what Thomas meant. I was born into a relatively wealthy family where my father runs a mid-sized trading company. He is well-informed and progressive in his thinking. My parents always respected my decisions, creating an environment where I could freely explore my interests. The 2008 Lehman Brothers collapse, when I was just an 11-year-old elementary school student, intrigued me. Witnessing the significant impact it had on the world and Japan, I became fascinated by how a disruption in the flow of funds could cause a global panic. This sparked my interest in researching financial circulation. Naturally curious and apparently quite intelligent, my parents had me take an IQ test, and the results exceeded the normal range. As I delved into this newfound interest, many aspects became clear, but my curiosity never waned throughout middle and high school. Continuing my exploration of this topic, I pursued a major in college that allowed me to deepen my understanding. As I delved further, my eagerness to apply my knowledge led me to venture into day trading, encouraged by my professor, who highlighted day trading as an excellent way to experience capital flow firsthand. I embraced the challenge, aware of the need for careful management to avoid debt. My research efforts were extensive as I identified statistically favorable stocks for day trading. Armed with a modest sum from all the allowances I had saved up, I engaged in buying and selling the same stock within the same day, with the goal of capitalizing on quick results. My predictions proved accurate, and though the initial increase was modest, I steadily grew my funds by repeating this process and gradually increasing my investment. In a year, I managed to amplify the initial amount by more than 50 times. While the sum may not have been significant on a larger scale, my primary concern wasn't about the magnitude of the achievement. What mattered most to me was whether the answers I had derived from my research were correct. During my university seminar, I encountered a student named Thomas, known for his analytical skills. Our shared perspectives on various topics drew us close, and after graduation, despite my initial plan to join my father's company, Thomas proposed an alternative path. He identified a job at a foreign investment firm, a proposition he presented on the day of our graduation ceremony. Following a celebration, Thomas confessed his feelings, and without hesitation, I said yes. His intelligence had always been a source of comfort, and his understanding nature made me feel at ease. As we both embarked on new journeys, gaining experience, our relationship continued to strengthen. Inspired by the concept of trade at my father's company, I dedicated myself to researching foreign companies to gain an advantage in negotiations and established a robust foundation for our deals. Thomas, with his inherent analytical skills, excelled in identifying profitable investment opportunities, earning high praise within his company. Despite our busy schedules, we maintained our connection through dates that provided refreshing breaks before diving back into our respective work. Over the 5 years of our relationship, we became indispensable to each other, evolving into a reliable support system. Deeply immersed in our exciting careers, we decided it was the right time to take the next step. Thomas proposed, expressing his desire to spend the rest of his life with me. Without hesitation, I accepted his proposal, eager to begin our life together. However, when it was time for a family meeting, Thomas disclosed something important about his sister, Alice. According to Thomas, Alice, his sister 2 years younger, was known for being challenging. He cautioned that she might cause some discomfort or inconvenience. Alice, exceptionally bright from a young age, developed a competitive spirit, looking down on others, including Thomas, whom she considered inferior. Even though Thomas was regarded as a prodigy, Alice claimed superiority, joining a rival investment and consulting firm to compete with him in her career. Thomas was worried that his engagement might affect Alice's pride, as she always sought to prove herself superior. Having no close friends and seemingly without a significant other, Alice appeared to harbor insecurities, masked by a brave face. Thomas was concerned about how she might react, fearing that she would intensify her efforts to demonstrate her strength in the face of our engagement. Attempting to reassure Thomas with a light-hearted "it's okay" proved ineffective, as his worry seemed unending. This only heightened my curiosity about his intense sister, Alice. Finally meeting her at a family gathering, her sharp, intelligent beauty was unmistakable, though a certain coldness lingered. Whether that was intrinsic to her nature or a result of my preconceived notions, I couldn't discern. Thomas's parents, in contrast, were kind and humorous, putting me at ease about getting along with them. However, beyond the initial greeting, Alice remained silent, merely eating her meal while scrutinizing me as if assessing my worth. After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, Alice pulled me aside. Curious about the person I would be, she expressed disappointment, dismissing me as just a girl who secured a job at her parents' company and likely slacking off. She asserted her financial prowess, claiming to move large amounts of money and make significant profits, placing herself on a level far superior to mine. According to Alice, Thomas settling for someone like me was disappointing, and she concluded by stating that today's gain was realizing how much I fell short of her standards. Stunned and unsure how to respond, Alice left the room, leaving me there. Thomas returned, noticing I hadn't left with Alice. Concerned, he asked if something had happened. In response to Alice's jab, I laughed it off, assuring Thomas that it was just a minor comment. Thomas apologized for his sister's rudeness, but I reassured him that I wasn't bothered. It didn't hurt, but I couldn't help but wonder what would happen the next time we met, particularly at the wedding. Strangely, I found myself looking forward to it, anticipating the interesting dynamics that might unfold. Surprised by my response, Thomas and I went on to have a grand wedding attended by family, friends, and colleagues from both sides. We pledged our eternal love and reveled in the joyous occasion, but Alice appeared grumpy and irritated right from the start. Thomas had mentioned that Alice had neither friends nor a romantic partner, so I could somewhat understand her feelings, finding it slightly amusing. During a break for a wardrobe change, as I waited for the staff to assist me, Alice entered seemingly without reason. She remarked that my happiness was only for the day and predicted that, as a plain woman, I wouldn't get the spotlight after the wedding, insinuating that I would just leech off Thomas' earnings. Unfazed, I couldn't comprehend how anyone could be satisfied with that. She declared her intentions to climb even higher on her own and find someone better than Thomas for an even grander wedding. With that rapid-fire monologue, a self-satisfied Alice left without giving me a chance to respond. As the staff walked in just after Alice's departure, I burst into laughter at the timing. Apologizing to the puzzled staff, I started changing, realizing that Alice knew how to keep things interesting. Since the wedding, I had no contact with her. I anticipated seeing her again, perhaps at Christmas when visiting my in-laws, but an unexpected connection with Alice arose sooner than expected. My father decided to seek external consulting for asset preservation and expansion at his company. Although I offered to handle it, he insisted on bringing in outside expertise, choosing a specific firm. Upon hearing the familiar name of the consulting firm during negotiations at my father's company, a sense of recognition washed over me, but I couldn't immediately place it. To my surprise, Alice was among the representatives of the firm, and the realization dawned that it was her company. We exchanged surprised glances, but silently agreed to act as if we were meeting for the first time, keeping our sister-in-law relationship a secret from the other team members. When I discussed the situation with Thomas at home, he already knew about it, expressing frustration. He suggested I step away from the project, but I found the situation amusing and laughed it off. Despite my amusement, I had to maintain professionalism during the negotiations. I pointed out flaws and inadequacies in their proposals, supported by logical reasoning that unsettled them. Alice tried to counter with past examples and mathematical evidence, but my responses exposed their weak points, leaving them silent. The meeting ended in my favor, with the other team agreeing to come up with a second proposal for the next meeting. As I relaxed with coffee after they left, I received a phone call meant for me. Answering the phone, it was Alice. She acknowledged my success, but declared that someone as excellent as her couldn't be bested by me. With a parting shot about not needing guidance from someone like me, she hung up. Bursting into laughter, I held the phone, drawing curious glances from nearby colleagues. From that point on, I took full control of the meetings, with their team often scrambling to respond to my points. Alice attempted comebacks but consistently fell short, her frustration visible. When I shared this with Thomas, he revealed that Alice had never been outdone by anyone before. Additionally, he mentioned that Alice had recently faced rejection from a guy she liked, compounding her irritation. I couldn't help but let out a surprised "huh" and stifle my laughter as the consulting project finally concluded successfully. The opposing team leader thanked us, expressing that they had learned a lot. And as everyone dispersed, Alice and I found ourselves alone. Alice, however, was not satisfied with the outcome. "I'm not satisfied with how things went. I'll make sure to get the better of you next time. Just so you know, I am more excellent. I even bought a tower mansion at my age. Only someone as outstanding as me could afford a brand new tower mansion," Alice declared, emphasizing her success as an investor. With that statement, Alice left, and Thomas later confirmed that what she said was true. Alice had indeed found success as an investor and recently bought a tower mansion to live on her own. While acknowledging her undeniable talent and the achievement within her reach, I genuinely wanted to congratulate her. A few days later, on the weekend, I had some business at a tower mansion. As I stopped at a certain mid-level floor, a door opened, and a resident stepped out. The resident and I locked eyes and both exclaimed in surprise. It was Alice. "Why are you here? If you're not invited to the party, did you come to clean?" I questioned. It seemed that today was the day of Alice's celebrity home party, as she had mentioned. "Not at all. I'm here to deliver something to an acquaintance on this floor." "You have an acquaintance here, and you came down from where?" Alice replied. "Well, my home is on the top floor of this mansion. Naturally, I had to come down." I countered, reminding her that she and Thomas lived in a single-story house because Thomas couldn't handle heights. Alice revealed that the tower mansion was her office and workshop. As we argued loudly in the hallway, a voice behind us asked, "Alice, what's going on?" Alice turned and said, "Sorry, Senior." The woman who had spoken and 3 other women looked at us with concern. "I apologize for not greeting you downstairs. I was just dealing with—" Alice seemed at a loss for words. The woman Alice called Senior looked at me, searching her memory, and exclaimed in surprise, "Aren't you Maya?" Alice was visibly confused. The senior explained, "Don't you know? This is Mrs. Mia, our new external board director starting this month. She's also known as the investment goddess whom Alice admires." Alice was speechless at this unexpected revelation, and the senior continued, "Also, she owns a significant share of your company, which made her a board director." Alice was overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. The senior added, "Alice, while extremely talented, has a poor reputation regarding teamwork and attitude towards colleagues. If she can't improve, she can't continue working in her current role." Alice was already knocked out by the harsh reality, kneeling and collapsed on the floor. Later, Thomas told me that Alice, once a fierce wolf, had become a small dog. It seemed she finally understood that there's always someone above her. Reflecting on my previous attitude, I felt a bit guilty for finding it all so amusing. Alice has become a lesson for me to never underestimate anyone and to treat others with respect. Thomas apologized for not being more involved in these events. but it's not his responsibility at all. His concern showed his good nature, and I love him all the more for it. My current hope is to start a family with Thomas soon. I can't wait to enjoy life as a family of 3. If Alice changes her mindset and broadens her perspective, she'll surely find friends and a partner soon. One night, I had a dream of a family of 3, and by the end of next year, we'll be a family of 5, triplets from the Cabbage Patch. I woke up sweating but couldn't help laughing at the prospect. Thrown at me instead of a warm greeting during a family gathering just before my son's wedding was a remark that hit hard. In front of me, a baguette from an upscale French restaurant rested on a glass plate, a symbol of unexpected humiliation served by my son's fiancé. I had raised my son, Christopher, on my own, and never did I imagine such a moment of degradation. As a 55-year-old housewife named So, widowed early in life, I had dedicated myself to nurturing Christopher. This year, he turned 25, graduated from college, and secured a job, becoming the pride of my life. Despite his success, he chose to continue living with me in the house left by his late father. I cherished the idea of spending more time with him. However, my world took an unexpected turn when Christopher revealed he had a girlfriend and intended to marry her. Initially shocked, I soon embraced the news with genuine joy, expressing my happiness at his growth. Christopher, still living with me, promised to bring her home soon, but the opportunity didn't materialize. Curiosity and anticipation built up in me, and when I finally asked about her, Christopher shared some details. Her name was Roy, 4 years older than him, and she worked as a tutor from a family of teachers. The revelation surprised me, and I wondered about their relationship, but I patiently waited to meet her. Time passed, and 2 months went by without a meeting. The absence of Roy started feeling intentional. Fate intervened when, by chance, I overheard a conversation during lunch. Seated back to back with a woman, she complained loudly about her upcoming family meeting before the wedding. Intrigued, I listened as she expressed a deliberate intention to delay meeting the family, wanting to test Christopher's commitment to their relationship and prove he was not a mama's boy. The unexpected encounter left me contemplating the dynamics at play, realizing that fate could be both intriguing and frightening. She said it, and I nearly turned around. Christopher's name echoed in the air, causing a slight dizziness. Her friend's advice to Roy, "You need to be more humble," confirmed the woman loudly discussing her future mother-in-law was none other than Christopher's fiancé. Holding my coffee cup, my hand trembled, and my friend, sensing my distress, asked if I was okay. I mechanically ate the recommended dessert, my mind fixated on escaping that place as quickly as possible. Unaware of my presence, Roy continued her complaints about her fiancé's family. She belittled the concept of a single mother family, comparing it to her supposedly superior educational background. Roy labeled me a clinging mother and spoke about making Christopher abandon me after the wedding. Fear overwhelmed any anger I felt. The conflict between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law had begun prematurely. Even before the family meeting before the wedding, Roy showcased her disdain. Yet, she was the woman Christopher chose. I tried to reassure myself that there must be something wonderful about her. Back home, I attempted to calm my nerves, resolving not to tell Christopher about this incident. Alone, I stopped pushing him about the family meeting. I knew she had no intention of attending, and I refused to continuously be looked down upon by being too accommodating. Christopher sensed my change of heart, but didn't press further. "It's okay if you're busy, whenever it's convenient for you," I told him, trying to ease his burden. The wedding plans between Christopher and Roy seemed to progress faster than the family meeting. Spotting a wedding venue brochure on the living room table, I realized the countdown had begun. I contemplated speaking up about the wrong order of things but refrained for my son's sake. Making a fuss would lead to accusations of being unable to let go or being a mama's boy, faceless accusations that would upset me. Christopher was crucial to me, but he was an independent adult. I had refrained from interfering more than necessary, demonstrating my tolerance. One morning, Christopher abruptly announced a family meeting with the parents-in-law. They had reserved a fancy French restaurant, and he wanted me to come. The meeting was scheduled in 2 days, a sudden announcement that left me a bit irritated. Shouldn't such things be planned after matching everyone's schedules? I held back my frustration, saying, "All right, I haven't formally met Roy yet, so it's good to meet her sooner." Christopher apologized for the sudden plan, but in my mind, it was Roy and her family who should be apologizing, not him. I reassured him that it's fine. On the day of the family meeting, Christopher and I arrived at the designated upscale French restaurant. I felt a bit nervous, it being my first time at such a fancy place. Christopher chuckled, acknowledging the nerve-wracking atmosphere. As we gave our name to the staff, we were guided to a private room where Roy's family had already gathered. Roy and her mother, Mara, were present. Excusing ourselves, I'd opened the door to the private room. Seated there were Mara, exuding a definite teacher vibe, and Roy, sporting slightly flashy makeup. Her dress seemed mismatched, likely chosen by Mara for the occasion. Roy and Mara remained silent until I finished my greetings, their scrutiny palpable as if evaluating me as a lesser presence. Christopher, familiar with Mara, greeted her with "long time no see." Mara chuckled, mentioning she had been looking forward to meeting the famous mother, a slight sting in her mention of single mother. Suppressing any reaction, I played it down, emphasizing Christopher's inexperience and suggesting they take care of him. Mara, contentedly nodding, maintained an air of superiority. Her demeanor hinted at how she might treat her students and their parents, an attitude I wouldn't desire for my child. She invited me to sit, yet Roy hadn't greeted me. With reluctance, I initiated conversation, prompting Roy to respond with a mocking snort, deeming repetition inefficient. Her arrogant remark stirred anger within me, but I restrained my temper. She was the woman Christopher had chosen. I feigned calmness, acknowledging her comment with forced civility, though I felt close to my limit. Mara informed us that Roy's father would be late due to work, suggesting we proceed without him. Roy then made a seemingly innocent comment to Christopher, insinuating his lack of exposure to such lavish food due to his past poverty. Christopher, unfazed, went along with her comment. I always knew Christopher to be kind and patient, but this situation seemed beyond that. Concerns about how he navigated society started to creep in. Was he possibly being taken advantage of? A parental worry nagged at me. Ignoring the odd expressions from Roy and Mara, I suggested we enjoy the feast. However, their unpleasant smiles intensified, and the reason behind their mockery soon became apparent. As the first dish arrived on a beautifully decorated plate, I couldn't help but exclaim at the sight of a simple baguette on a glass plate. Roy and Mara seemed to find this hilariously amusing, laughing heartily at my shocked expression. It turned out that the owner of the upscale French restaurant was Mara's brother, and they had collaborated to ridicule me. "The pour that suits you best," Roy said, openly mocking me. Christopher, seemingly pale, and I were left in disbelief. Trying to contain my anger, I muttered about how this supposedly suited a poor person like me. Roy misinterpreted my reaction, thinking I was crying. Dismissing it, she laughed even harder. Surprisingly, Mara, who might be expected to scold Roy, only said, "Oh dear, Roy," without any intention of reprimanding her. I couldn't bear the idea of such individuals becoming part of my family. Just as I raised my bowed head, Roy's father entered, apologizing for being late. Witnessing the baguette situation, he seemed taken aback. Roy proudly explained that she had the baguette prepared, thinking I, raised in poverty, hadn't experienced such cuisine. Her father scolded her for taking the joke too far, but couldn't hide his amusement. The thought of them becoming my family was unbearable. As the father turned pale, I looked up and recognized him. Cedric, the principal of a private high school where I had been facing difficulties. I expressed my surprise, and he exclaimed in shock, revealing that he had become the principal 3 years ago. Instead of dwelling on educational policies, I couldn't resist suggesting he pay more attention to education at home, especially considering the insult from his daughter, something I vowed never to forget. I said, staring down at him. He had always berated me, claiming that a single mother couldn't be a principal. He had spread rumors that I couldn't properly educate my own child. Roy, realizing the impact of her actions, seemed taken aback. Marcia trembled, lost for words. I looked at each member of Roy's family and slowly bit into the baguette. The sound of meat crunching echoed in the room. Delicious, as expected of a high-end French restaurant's baguette. "How about it, Cedric?" I'd offered, smiling as I held out the glass plate with the baguette. His hand trembled amusingly as he took it. "Don't get the wrong idea. I'd always separate work and personal life. Your dismissal has always been a topic at the board meetings. I was the one opposing it. Without rivalry, there's no momentum for reform. But your role ends here," I declared, giving him a final warning. In fact, I had evidence of him accepting bribes during admissions, manipulating interviews, and enjoying a luxurious life with that money. I was still deciding whether to pursue criminal charges, but if he left the school quietly, I was willing to let it go. "Christopher, let's go home. She may be this kind of lady, but can you still see her as a marriage partner? I won't stop you if you choose her," I said to Christopher, whose gaze was fixed on the baguette Cedric held out to him. Roy, with a strange smile, whispered, "You'll marry me, right?" Thinking that marrying him was her only way to save Cedric's position, her pleading eyes turned to him. He looked down, gripping his hands on his knees. "The engagement is off. This marriage is as if it never happened," he declared. "It's just a joke. I didn't mean to mock you." "It's a joke, Christopher." "You're so stiff." Roy desperately tried to cover up. If that wasn't mockery, then what was it? I was amazed that she couldn't come up with a better excuse. He looked at Roy with an unexpectedly cold gaze. "Roy, you've been given a lot by your parents, education, and love. But I believe I received even more from my mom. Seeing her work was cool. She's still cool," he declared. He could never forgive her for mocking me and expressed pity for the students she was teaching. "I wouldn't want to be taught by someone like her. I heard bad rumors about you but chose to believe otherwise. You betrayed that trust," he said, causing tears to stream down Roy's face. She seemed to finally understand the irreversible damage done. Wait. You're joking about the breakup, right?" "I bragged about getting married to my friends. I can't break it off. It's embarrassing," she pleaded tearfully. "What's most necessary for you now is to reflect on how things came to this. We probably won't see each other again, but I hope you grow," I said. As Christopher and I were about to leave the private room, Cedric grabbed his shoulder to stop him. Christopher shook off his hand as if it were something filthy. "I've been patient, but let me say this clearly. What's wrong with being raised by a single mother? Did you see Roy's vulgar behavior? Raised by respectable parents. You should be more ashamed," he said firmly. Cedric had no response and looked down in shame. Roy's cries echoed in the private room as we left the restaurant. The moment we stepped outside, we heard Cedric's angry voice, probably yelling at Roy. "Christopher, you need to be more discerning in choosing women." When I said that, he scratched his head and mumbled, "It's embarrassing." Apparently, Roy had aggressively pursued him, and Christopher, who tends to be easily swayed, fell into that situation. It was clear that Roy saw an opportunity in him. Regardless, I expressed relief that everything came to light before the marriage as we headed home. The engagement ended amicably. Roy initially demanded compensation, but Christopher dismissed it logically, explaining to his lawyer that Roy was entirely to blame for the broken engagement. The compensation demand was dropped, and when threatened with a lawsuit, Roy quickly backed down. Perhaps her parents advised her not to escalate the situation further. Though I usually keep work and personal life separate, Cedric had to leave the school due to the bribery issue during admissions becoming public. Faced with the choice of leaving quietly or going to court, he opted for the former. Unemployed and desperately seeking a new job, he faced the challenge of overcoming the bad rumors that spread fast in the industry. Roy, having resigned from her tutoring job, was reportedly confined to a room in her parents' house, too embarrassed to even seek new employment. Marcia, burdened with two unemployed adults, was allegedly preparing for divorce, yet she couldn't maintain her previous luxurious lifestyle. She wanted to use her earnings solely for herself, citing that as her reason for divorce. A logical decision, perhaps, but one that led to the family's downfall. While I feel a bit sorry for her, I believe it's her responsibility. Sometimes after the incident, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in a while. Christopher introduced me to a wonderful woman, a single mother working at the same place as him. She has a daughter about to turn 3, and it seems she was the one who lifted Christopher's spirits after the broken engagement with Roy. She is bright and sunny, and her daughter is fond of Christopher. Despite the roundabout journey, I am slightly relieved that Christopher seems to be on his way to building a happy family. Maybe, despite the challenges, I'll even become a grandmother. You've inherited over $3 million, right? We've already started constructing a duplex for us to live together. I've even included the kitchen of my dreams, my mother-in-law says in a tone that's almost dreamy. I've quit my job. I'm planning to start a business with the inheritance that Ashley has received. My husband announces, looking oddly pleased. Wait a minute, I've told you I haven't received any inheritance yet, right? You've quit your job, and you're building a duplex. What's happening? Don't lie. It's clear you've inherited. How about we take a trip before the house gets built? How about Hawaii? My father-in-law chimes in, adding to the growing confusion with my husband and my mother-in-law. What on earth are these people thinking? They want to use the precious inheritance I received from my mother and spend it on whatever they please. Even though I was filled with rage, I didn't know what to do. The story goes back a few months ago. My name is Ashley. I'm 38 years old and work as a high school teacher. I married David, an office worker who is 2 years older than me, 12 years ago. Soon after we got married, our only daughter Julie was born, and since then, my days have been filled with work and child rearing. Today is the day I'm visiting my hospitalized mother with my daughter. Oh, Grandma, it's been a while. Well, Julie, welcome. My mother lies in her bed, lovingly stroking Julie's hair. Her hand is noticeably thinner, and her complexion looks poor. Next to my mother's bed stands a middle-aged man wearing glasses and a suit. As I nod towards him, he returns the nod and leaves the room. Mom, who is that man? Just an acquaintance. Don't worry about it. More importantly, Ashley, are you still doing well? And David, is he well? My mother's eyes, a shade close to blue, sparkle softly as she smiles. She met my father, who ran an import-export business overseas, and came to the U.S. as his bride. Raising a child in a foreign country must have been hard, but my mother and father worked together to bring me up. One of the reasons I am able to work as a teacher today is because my mother taught me many things since I was small. I am deeply grateful to my parents who raised me with love in a wealthy family. After my father passed away a few years ago, my mother, now alone, fell ill and was hospitalized. She transferred the business to a relative, and now she spends her remaining days quietly in the hospital. I'm fine, Mom. Is there anything you need? Just having you and Julie come to see me is more than enough. After having such a conversation and spending a good amount of time talking with my mother, Julie, and I headed home. Julie talks to my mother about things that happened at school and the book she has recently read. She's at that tricky age of 10, but our relationship is good. Even if I take away my parental bias, I think she is a bright and honest child who is growing up well. We're home. Oh, welcome back. How's my mother-in-law doing? David asks as he greets us. Mom is as usual. How about you? Your seminar, was it? Oh, I heard some good stuff. Looking forward to the next one. Recently, my husband has been attending seminars on quitting his job and starting a side business. He must want more money, but the company he works for is not top tier. It's not bad, and with my salary, we are doing just fine. I find it distasteful when he is so greedy for money, which I suppose he gets from his parents. Ever since we got married, I've been put off by his parents' excessive stinginess and their habit of begging for small amounts of money whenever we see them, so I've been keeping my distance. They've never given Julie any Christmas gifts. Fortunately, my in-laws live far away, so we don't have to interact much, and my husband does well with household chores, so I guess it's okay. As long as I have my mother, my husband, Julie, and our modest but ordinary life, I'm content. Then one day, I got a call from the hospital. My mother's condition had suddenly worsened, and she was in critical condition. When my family rushed to the hospital, my mother was barely breathing. Mom? Grandma? No. Ashley, I always wanted you to be happy. Cherish Julie more than anything. I love you. In the end, those were my mother's last words. My mother, who raised me with all her heart alongside my father, adored Julie from the bottom of her heart. My mother's face in the coffin was peaceful, and all I could do was cry. Julie was by my side, crying with me. A little while after my mother passed away, an envelope arrived at our house, a law firm. Ashley was perplexed as she opened the envelope from an unfamiliar sender. Inside was a document stating, "I have been entrusted with your mother's will, which leaves all of her inheritance to you." Ashley and her mother had never discussed the subject of inheritance before, so she was taken aback. However, since the letter had indeed arrived, she decided to visit the law firm on her own. "Hello, I'm the attorney Ed." The man who appeared was the middle-aged gentleman with glasses who had been present when she visited her mother in the hospital. "You were in my mother's hospital room before?" Ashley questioned the man with the familiar face. "Yes, we met in the hospital room. Actually, from that time, I was entrusted by your mother." Hearing his kind voice, Ashley found herself on the verge of tears, and then she was shocked beyond belief. 500 million. Yes, Ashley. When your father passed away, you waived your right to the inheritance so your mother could receive it all. When you add that inheritance to your mother's personal assets, even after deducting taxes, this is the amount your mother has named you as the sole heir. My parents had indeed been wealthy, but I hadn't imagined that they had left such an inheritance. I had never asked my parents for money after getting married and avoided the topic of inheritance as it seemed unlucky. Feeling dizzy, I realized this must be an expression of love from my mother. With that thought, I left the procedures to Ed. Your mother cared about you more than anything. She instructed me to assist you if necessary. Please feel free to discuss anything with me. Thank you. I appreciate your help. Ashley bowed her head several times to Ed and left the room. Time passed, and it was around the time of her mother's 49th day memorial service. Her husband, David, began to frequently ask about her mother's inheritance. When they had married, her father was still running his business, so David was vaguely aware that they were wealthy. Each time she asked him to stop talking about it while she was still mourning, he would fall silent, only to subtly bring up the matter of money after some time. The worst were my in-laws. When they came to my mother's memorial service, my father-in-law said, "Ashley, if you are worried about the inheritance, we can help." Huh? Hey, we've had our fair share of disputes over inheritance. When unmarried siblings died, inheritance can be complicated. If you're troubled, feel free to talk about it. That's right. Rely on us too. Yes. Having never shown any inclination to assist them before, she could only give her in-laws a vague response as they put on a knowing facade. And then, about 3 months after her mother's death, David, who had been quiet recently, finally lost his patience. "Hey, have you received your mother's inheritance yet?" A bad feeling swept over her quickly. Ashley lied. The procedures are complicated, so not yet. In reality, she had already completed the procedures and, upon Ed's advice, had deposited the passbook containing the inheritance in a safe deposit box. But it felt right to say that now. Really? But it's been 3 months since your mother passed away, right? Haven't you done the procedures yet? Yeah, so what? Well, never mind. I'm going to bed. For some reason, David headed for the bedroom in high spirits. With the nagging unease in her chest, Ashley prepared for work the next day and then headed for bed. The next day, as Ashley and Julie were cleaning up after dinner, the doorbell rang. Julie hurried to the door, and when Ashley poked her head out from the kitchen, she saw her in-laws who had dropped by unexpectedly and David returning from work. "Why are my father-in-law and mother-in-law here?" "It's not a big deal, Julie. Go to your room." Julie glanced anxiously at us and headed to her room. "What's going on?" "Never mind that, Ashley. We have something to celebrate today." Ed, her father-in-law, was in high spirits as he opened their fridge and took out a beer. "Celebration. You inherited more than $300 million, didn't you? We've already started building a duplex house for us to live together. It even comes with a dreamlike modern kitchen." The one who spoke in the dreamy tone was her mother-in-law. "What? What are you talking about, Ashley?" "Be happy. We've decided to build a duplex house. We used half of our savings and the money that Mom and Dad have put aside for the down payment. The loan is under my name, but you can pay it all at once with your inheritance, right? Give back to the two of them. I quit my job. I decided to start a business using that inheritance you received." David, her husband, looked somehow satisfied as he said these words. "Wait a minute. What are you talking about? I told you I haven't received the inheritance yet, didn't I? And what does quitting your job and a duplex house mean? Don't lie. It's clear you've inherited. How about we go on a trip before the house is built? How about Hawaii?" Amidst the escalating chaos, David and her mother-in-law were getting excited, agreeing with what Ed said. Then David said, laughing scornfully, "You're stingy, Ashley. We've looked into it because you kept saying you hadn't received the inheritance. You can't renounce an inheritance if you don't process it within 3 months. Whether you lied or told the truth about not processing, you still have inherited, right? That is, considering the scale of my father-in-law's company, there must be more than 300 million. We'll be able to live comfortably thanks to them. Thank you, mother-in-law. Be sure to prepare the money for the duplex house as soon as possible, and my capital too." Seeing David speak like that made her dizzy. But what on earth are these people who want to use my precious inheritance that I received from my mother as they please and indulge in luxury? Although filled with intense anger and about to yell, she couldn't say a word, worried about Julie, who was in the other room. "I'm going outside for a bit." She called out to the three of them, but they didn't hear her, happily discussing how they would use the inheritance. She went out without even taking her wallet. The night wind was cool, and it was then that the tears came. She went to the hilltop park where she used to come with her mother and cried, holding back her voice. Her anger didn't subside. Feeling frustrated and worn out, her heart was exploited. Her emotions were a mess, but she couldn't just say she wanted a divorce. They still had their child, Julie. Her mother's words, "Take care of Julie above all else," came back to her, and tears spilled again. Suddenly, someone spoke to her. Surprised, she opened her eyes, and the person began to speak softly. 3 days later, she called her husband and in-laws to a restaurant with private rooms. "So you finally came back home after that day. Did you withdraw the money, Ashley? You shouldn't leave home without telling your husband." "Exactly." Ignoring the words of the three people, she took out a document. It was a divorce notice already filled out. "David, I want a divorce." "What? What are you saying?" Her husband looked panicked, and her in-laws looked at each other. "I can't go on with you anymore." "What are you saying?" David's face was turning red as he lashed out at her. "You're leaving us after receiving the inheritance. You changed because you got the money, you miser." "That's my words, Ashley. Snap back. Ever since I inherited my mother's estate, you've been out of control. Quitting jobs to start a business, deciding to live with in-laws without even asking, taking out my savings to build a 2-family home, and then planning a trip to Hawaii. Who is the one who changed when the money came in? I can't possibly stay with such people." "Wait, you can't just divorce me like that." "That's right. Our savings after marriage are shared property. Half of the inheritance belongs to David, no matter what. That's correct. If it comes to that, we will take $300 million with us. David and my in-laws were foaming at the mouth as they approached me. Just as I was about to respond, the door to the private room slid open. Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma should know better. The inheritance Mom received doesn't become shared property, right, Mr. Ed? There stood my daughter Julie and Attorney Ed. Julie, and who are you? I'm Attorney Ed. Ashley's mother had entrusted me with this matter, and I've been advising Ashley. As Ed bowed, Dave seemed flustered. That's all well and good, but wait. The inheritance doesn't become shared property? That's correct. Inherited property from a deceased parent has not become shared property, nor is it subject to the division of property. What? You've got to be kidding me. Is this a mistake? That can't be. In front of the flustered three, I was taken aback. It seems that they really thought that the inheritance I received would become their property. In that case, it's even more reason not to divorce. I'll cling to you no matter what. My husband with bloodshot eyes shouted out without any regard. Stop it already? That was Julie. She continued her calm words. Since Mom suggested divorce, no, since Mom inherited the estate. Has Dad ever thought about Mom once? Grandpa and Grandma only ever talk about money. They never once mentioned me. I can't consider such people as family. David and my in-laws were taken aback. The day I was crying about my inheritance, Julie was the one who spoke up. Julie came running after me, and she told me Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma are too much, trying to take Grandma's legacy for themselves. Mom, I'm on your side. Let's fight this together. With those words, I made up my mind, contacted Ed, and arranged this meeting. Julie, it's not like that. Dad wants you to be happy. That's right, Julie dear. You'd be happier living with us, wouldn't you? That's right. A child shouldn't interfere. My desperate husband and still assertive in-laws. Julie, with an exasperated look on her face, said, I'm going with Mom. I can't bear to be with you anymore. Julie said this and looked away. Anyway, we've made up our minds. Julie and I will be leaving. As I said this calmly, David got angry. Hey, I've never cheated, and you can't force a divorce. I'll hire a lawyer. We'll get that money one way or another. If that's the case, I will take care of it from here. Ed spoke quietly. The issue here is whether there are grave reasons for not continuing the marriage, quitting his job, using the household savings without permission, deciding to live together, and Julie is saying she can't bear it. There are various points we can argue. Moreover, your daughter recorded the sound of all of you begging for Ashley's inheritance. That should also serve as evidence. Damn it. David slumped, and my in-laws turned pale. After seeing that, Julie and I left the restaurant. A year later, thanks to Ed's efforts, my divorce with David was finalized. Julie and I moved into the house my mother had lived in, but there were several times when we received letters saying, I love you, come back, and David was seen loitering near Julie's school. So we asked Abe to apply for a restraining order. After that, it was quiet. According to the rumors, they actually did build a two-family home. My already retired in-laws had to work in a factory, and although David looked for work, he couldn't find any and is now doing manual labor. I heard from the neighbors that there were constant arguments in the new two-family house because of their troublesome fights. They became disliked by everyone in the neighborhood. Julie and I are still living peacefully, helping each other. A while ago, Julie said, I want to study abroad in the country where Grandma grew up, so it cut ties completely with my ex-husband. We made up our minds to move overseas. We used a bit of my mother's inheritance, but I'm sure she would be pleased. Now, Julie seems to be enjoying school every day, and I've started working as a teacher there. I hope these peaceful days continue.